You stand up. You walk down the hallway. You step into the kitchen, and it's gone. The reason you came here, the thing that felt so urgent 15 seconds ago, has vanished completely. You stand there, staring at the refrigerator, interrogating your own mind like a detective at a crime scene. Nothing. So you do the strange thing, the thing everyone does. You walk back to the room you started in, and the memory comes back. Nobody taught you to do this. Nobody suggested it. Somehow, you already knew that the memory wasn't in your head. It was in the room. Think about how strange that is. Your brain is the most sophisticated information storage system known to exist. It holds roughly 86 billion neurons. It can store the lyrics to a song you haven't heard since childhood. It can recognize a face you saw once, 20 years ago, in a crowd. And yet, it cannot hold a single thought. Get the scissors across a distance of 10 feet. Why? The answer isn't that your memory is failing. The answer is much stranger. Your brain deleted that thought on purpose. And the trigger wasn't time, or distraction, or age. It was the doorway. To understand why a doorway can erase your mind, you have to go back. Way back. Before doors existed, before rooms existed, before walls. For roughly 95% of human history, our ancestors lived in open environments. Savannas, forests, coastlines. There were no hallways, no kitchens, no bedrooms. The world was not divided into boxes, but it was divided into something else, situations. A watering hole at dusk was one situation, the tall grass beyond it was another. The shade of the trees, the open plain, the edge of the camp at night, each of these was its own world, with its own dangers, its own opportunities, its own rules. And here's what mattered. The moment you crossed from one situation into another, the old rules stopped applying. The predator you were tracking in the grass is irrelevant at the riverbank. The fruit you spotted in the trees doesn't matter when a lion appears on the plain. What kept you alive was not remembering everything. What kept you alive was forgetting the right things at the right time. Dumping the old situation from your mental workspace so you could load the new one at full resolution. Evolution didn't build your brain to be a recording device, it built your brain to be a survival machine. And a survival machine doesn't archive, it refreshes. Your working memory, the small mental desk where you hold your current thoughts, is astonishingly limited. Most research suggests it holds only about 4 chunks of information at a time. 4. That's it. That's the desk you run your entire conscious life on. So the brain evolved a ruthless janitor. A background process that watches for one specific signal, the signal that you've moved from one situation into another. And when it detects that signal, it sweeps the desk clean. Scientists have a name for that signal. They call it an event boundary. But here's what's fascinating. Your brain doesn't detect event boundaries by reading your intentions, or your emotions, or your goals. It detects them through something far more primitive. In 2011, a cognitive psychologist named Gabriel Radvansky at the University of Notre Dame designed an experiment that sounds almost absurdly simple. Participants sat at a computer and moved through a virtual environment, a series of large rooms connected by doorways. Their task was easy: pick up an object from a table, carry it to another table, set it down, pick up the next object. Over and over. Sometimes the next table was across the same room. Sometimes it was through a doorway, in a different room. Critically, the distances were identical. Same number of steps, same amount of time. The only difference was whether the participant passed through a door. At random moments, the screen would flash a question. What object are you carrying? The object was hidden, carried in a virtual backpack, so participants couldn't just look. They had to remember. The results were unambiguous. When people walked the same distance across a single room, their memory stayed sharp. But the moment they passed through a doorway, their memory for the object got measurably worse. Slower responses, more errors, same time. The doorway alone degraded the memory. Radvansky called it the location updating effect, but it quickly became known by a better name, the doorway effect. And then he pushed further. Maybe, skeptics said, it was just the virtual environment. So Radvansky ran the experiment again. In real rooms, with real objects, real boxes, real doorways. Same result. Walking through a physical door made people forget what they were carrying. Then came the twist experiment. The one that reveals what's actually happening beneath the skull. Researchers had participants walk through a doorway into a new room, and then walk back through it, returning to the exact room where the memory was formed. If a doorway simply distracted you, returning should fix everything. The original context is right there. The walls, the furniture, the lighting. It didn't fix everything. The memory did not fully return. Why not? Hold that question. Because the answer changes what a doorway actually is. Here's what almost everyone gets wrong about the doorway effect. We assume the doorway is a distraction, that the brain gets briefly overloaded by the new room and drops the thought. That's not what's happening. The doorway isn't distracting your brain. The doorway is instructing it. Cognitive scientists, including Jeffrey Sachs and his lab at Washington University in St. Louis, have spent years studying how the mind carves continuous experience into pieces. Their conclusion is remarkable. Your brain does not experience life as a smooth, unbroken stream. It experiences life as a sequence of discrete events, like scenes in a film. And your brain is constantly automatically deciding where one scene ends and the next begins. A doorway is one of the most powerful cut-here signals your brain knows. When you cross that threshold, your mind doesn't just move your body into a new space. It closes the file on the previous event. It compresses it, stamps it, and shelves it in long-term storage. And then it purges your working memory to make room for whatever this new scene demands. Your intention, get the scissors, was written on that desk. And the janitor doesn't check what's on the desk before sweeping it. He just sweeps. This is why walking back through the door doesn't reliably restore the memory. You're not returning to the scene. As far as your brain is concerned, you've now started a third event. The original file is closed. Sometimes the old room provides enough matching cues to reopen it. That's why the walkback trick often works. But the memory was never sitting there waiting. It has to be reconstructed. And this points to the deepest twist of all. The doorway effect isn't a glitch. It's the system working perfectly. That flash of blankness in the kitchen is the same machinery that lets you leave a stressful meeting and be present at dinner. The same machinery that makes a vacation feel like a different life. The same machinery that lets you close the door on one chapter and mean it literally. Your forgetting is not a failure of memory. It is the architecture of memory. The scenes of your life don't exist out there in the world. There is no natural law that says walking into the kitchen is a new event. Your brain drew that line. Your brain draws all the lines, every scene break, every chapter division, every boundary between then and now. Which raises a question most people never think to ask. If your brain is cutting your life into scenes without asking you, what else is it deciding without you? Consider what your memory of the past actually is. It isn't footage. It's a stack of closed files. Events your brain packaged, compressed, and labeled at boundaries it chose. When you remember your childhood, your last relationship, the person you were 5 years ago, you're not rewinding a tape. You're opening files that were edited before they were ever stored. The doorway effect proves this happens dozens of times a day, in the most mundane moments imaginable. Getting up from the couch. Walking into the kitchen. Every threshold you cross, your brain quietly declares, that scene is over. And maybe that's why certain moments in life feel the way they do. Why leaving a childhood home feels like losing something you can't name. Why the last day of a job feels like a small death, even when you wanted to quit. Why people say a chapter of their life closed. Your brain isn't using a metaphor. It's describing its own filing system. Somewhere in the deep past, this machinery kept your ancestors alive. Clearing the desk at the edge of the tall grass, at the mouth of the cave, at the border of the firelight. Today, that same ancient janitor follows you through your apartment, sweeping away your grocery lists and your scissors. But he's also doing something else. Every day, at every threshold, he is quietly deciding where your story gets its scene breaks. Which moments belong together? Where before ends and after begins. You've spent your whole life believing you were the author of that story.